You're listening to the best of the Ray Powers Hour.
This is the Ray Powers Hour, the number one show for new music all over the world. I am on the line with a friend who is back. One time just wasn't enough.
Yes.
He's a glutton for punishment. Ladies and gentlemen,
Well,
Mr.
obviously.
Steve March-Torme. How are you, bud?
I'm doing well, sir. Outside of whining about a pulled hamstring, I'm doing well. Coming off a couple of really fun concerts, as I know you talked with my friend Michael Bailey.
I did.
I guess we'll get into that a little bit later on, but
Sure.
Yeah, no complaints. I mean, look, with what's going on the last year and a half, we're finally seeing an incline in our lifestyle, so this is all good.
Yeah. So how did you pull the hammy? Let's just not gloss over that.
Well, I was playing a 17-year-old girl who plays on her high school team in tennis and singles last Wednesday. And in the second set, running to my right, it just went, and I don't get pulled hamstrings. That's not a common injury for me at all. So I knew it was bad from the second it happened. I finished the match with her, and I have not been on the court again until this morning. So it's not like me to be a week away from a tennis court, because that's basically the exercise I get now.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I like to say it's not the age, it's the miles, but, that's me. So that's what it is.
Some people have both, like the Rolling Stones now, they qualify for both.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you got the age, you got the miles, and let's just say, perhaps for some of them participating in certain activities that don't help.
Preservatives.
Right, exactly. Exactly, preservatives.
Wow, I play softball.
Pardon me?
I play softball, but that's only once a week.
Well, if it's once a week, then you're playing slow pitch.
Yeah. I would love to play fast pitch, but with my schedule, there's no way I could do that.
You would have to be playing all the time.
Yeah.
Show me a good fast pitch player. I'll show you somebody who's either divorced, not married, or has a wife that puts up with an awful lot.
Exactly.
Because you have to play that. Yeah, you got to play that a lot to be good at it.
Yeah, at our age, yeah, absolutely. Or a baseball player, because adult baseball leagues, it's the same thing.
That's true. You're right. There are adult baseball leagues, and because you got to run even more, you got to be in even better shape.
Yeah.
Because the bases are 90 feet instead of 60. So
Right.
Different story.
Big right fields.
Did we talk about softball last time we did an interview?
I don't think so, because I think it was January, and I probably wasn't in the headspace yet.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's not a lot of talk about softball in January. Well, if you want, though it's probably not going to be all that interesting to your audience, we can touch on fast pitch softball to some extent later on in this interview if you like. I actually have a somewhat interesting story.
Oh, well, please do tell.
Yeah, well, okay. I'll encapsulate it. When I was my first love was baseball before music, and as a kid, 8, 9, 10 years old and on, my desire was to play professional baseball, hopefully for the Yankees, because I was growing up in Westchester County, New York.
Right.
So anyway, ended up playing, like a lot of kids, Little League and Pony League, blah blah blah, and then realized I really like music. I really like singing. I like being in front of an audience. And at about the age of 15 or 16, realized, you know what? I think your career is going to be in music because you're better at it. And I think if I had stayed with baseball, the best I ever would have gotten was maybe single A minor league ball, maybe. But at about 19, 20, 22, 23 years old, I was playing slow pitch, like you were talking about. And for your listeners who may or may not know what that is, that's high arc softball, where you throw the ball up real high, and the scores of the games are often 23-19. And after that, I got bored with it, and I discovered fast pitch softball. And I taught myself how to pitch. And I found out about something that was coming. I started playing in leagues, all the time. And I wasn't married at the time, so I had the time to do this. And I was playing in fairly competitive fast pitch softball leagues against really good players. And a buddy of mine said, by the way, do you know what the Maccabee games are? I said, yeah, I know what the Maccabee games are. I said, not everybody does, but they're basically the Olympic Games for Jewish athletes. And they take place in Tel Aviv every 4 years, and it's staggered so it doesn't come in the same year as the real Olympics. So if you have the Olympics in 1980 and 84, the Maccabee games are 82 and 86, so they don't there's no conflict. In any event, they were having tryouts, and they were going to have fast pitch softball in the Maccabee games over in Israel for the first time. So I tried out in Los Angeles. They had 160 players across the country because, believe it or not, there are not that many Jewish fast pitch softball players. Anyway, so I tried out and I made the team in '85. There were 15 of us out of the entire country that made the team. And I went over to Israel and played for the United States. And we played against Canada in the gold medal game, and they were really good. I mean, big boys that threw really hard. I mean, 80s and up.
Wow.
And we won the gold medal in '85. I was a starting center fielder. And 4 years later, I made the team again as a pitcher. And we won the gold medal again. So that's a very short version of the whole story. I went to Israel twice playing for a national team for the United States and won 2 gold medals in the Maccabea Games and took my fledgling softball career farther than I ever thought I would. And that's that. That's all. And I got to sing the national anthem at the gold medal game. So put a little music in there.
Man, you like Bugs Bunny. You're a starting pitcher. You're singing the national anthem. I mean, my God. What would they have done without you?
Where do you go with that? Basically, you try to retire after that. Yeah, I was the second starting pitcher. We had a huge guy named Dave Blackburn, whose father was like a fast pitch legend, and so was Dave. Dave was 330 pounds if he was anything. Big calves, threw really hard, and since we were playing a 7-game tournament, they didn't want him to throw every game, so I threw against Panama and I threw against Venezuela, and fortunately, we won both our games, and like I said, ended up winning that second gold medal. And I was asked after that to come back and play again. I said, I can't. I said, it takes too much time, too much devotion. You got to be in the gym. You got to be playing in leagues. I said, I've got a music career here. It can't be about fast pitch softball. So I was thrilled. I got my 2 gold medals, and to me, like that was as Walter Mitty-ish as I'm going to get with sports. And after that, it became tennis. So my fast pitch days are over.
Wow, that's some story.
Yeah, it was fun. So where do you play? You play out in parks, obviously?
Yeah, we have our games out either like in Randall's Island or
cool.
Central Park. I mean, we have different, locations throughout the city. I used to play fast pitch uptown with the Dominicans, and man, you want to talk about intense.
Oh, yeah. It's a different ball game.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's... fast pitch players kind of take pride in the fact that we don't play slow pitch.
Right.
But the reason is, slow pitch is a beer league game. Anybody can play it. It's fun. You go out and have beer and pizza afterwards. Fast pitch, those are serious boys. I mean, a lot of them are, ex-baseball players. And, your typical score of a fast pitch game, what I'm talking about, is, 2-1.
4-3.
Maybe 4-0's like a blowout. A lot of no-hitters. And it's a different game. It takes a different skill level, and it's really hard. And I was never a great player, but I was good enough to make those teams. So all good.
I always found it easier though, coming out of baseball, to hit fast pitch. Even some of these girls who throw windmill, like I was able to, once you can time it, you can get around with the same swing. It's a lot harder with the arc because, the strike is coming in behind you a lot of times.
Well, it's also not natural to be swinging up at a ball.
Right.
To be a good slow pitch hitter, especially if a guy can really, if it's unlimited arc, that's hard to hit. It's still hard to hit fast pitch softball because that ball moves more than a baseball because it's bigger. Feel like if you threw in a volleyball, you could make it curve and rise and dip even more. And the men, I think, are a little tougher than the women when it comes to fast pitch. Those boys can blow it big time. So it's still tough. But I hear you. If you come in from baseball and you can time a fastball, you should be able to hit. Yeah.
Plus, with a softball, you're throwing underhand. The ball is coming towards you. The rotation is coming towards you. So it's a whole different everything, different spin, different arc, different trajectories. Yep.
Different release point.
Yeah.
You play baseball, you're watching a shoulder. You play fast pitch softball, you're watching someone's hip. Mm-hmm. And it takes a little getting used to.
Most of the leagues now.
Hey, I'm thrilled that I went as far as I did. I'm thrilled. So all done.
Yeah. Most leagues are modified these days. You can only go halfway up.
Yep. I played my share of that too. That's a great game. Yeah. In fact, that's a really nice blend of the two because you don't have a bunch of 1-0 games, but you still have to be able to play. You still have to be able to throw and hit and run, and that's a fun game. That's fairly popular in Southern California. I mean, I know they've been playing softball in Central Park for a million years, so I'm not surprised you played there.
Absolutely. But if anybody's still left, anybody who wanted to hear about music, Steve and I also do that as well in the off season.
Exactly. When we're not, wasting our time trying to play sports. Yeah, you and I, we have a lot in common. I mean, I didn't realize that you played fast pitch, but we are both musicians.
Yeah.
We both host radio shows.
That's correct.
I don't know if you went into radio purposely. Mine was almost by accident. And I have now been hosting here in Wisconsin on radio 6 days a week for 10 years.
Wow.
It goes flying by. But did you get in by accident, or did you want to do radio?
No, I definitely wanted to do it. I grew up with Scott Muni. I grew up with Tony Pig. Some of the the legendary DJs throughout the city. Pat St. John, and
was Scott Muni in New York?
Yeah, he was WNEW.
Okay.
Before that, I don't know if I don't think he was one.
That's also Cousin Brucey, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he was one of the good guys, right? WABC and then
right,
CBS
very
FM.
good. The WNEW good guys.
Yeah,
Cousin Brucey and Scott Muni and of course the real Don Steele. I think he was out in L.A.
Yeah.
Wow, that goes back a ways.
Yeah, I mean that was the golden era, like the 60s and 70s, when it was AM and then it made the move to FM.
Well, I think the same guys basically just changed their voices from AM to FM.
Pretty much, yeah. A little more compression. Yeah.
Absolutely. The AM guys all had the, and right now coming up, they got the Stones and something from the Rascals. And as soon as they went to FM and they realized they could go, yeah, we're going to play something by the Grateful Dead now. Hope you're hanging out and everything's cool. It was like, yeah, it's the same guy.
Exactly. He went from coffee. He went from coffee in the morning to the night shift.
Yes.
And now we're going to just bring it on down. This is a deep cut by Jethro Tull. I'm going to go take a leak. Or fire one up, or do something.
That's exactly what it was. Exactly. We have a guy here on our station who people think he's doing a bit because he's on at late night and he's got the FM thing going, but he's not really doing it as a bit. That's really his voice. And he'll say, just hanging out and I'm gonna play a little Cyndi Lauper for you, and then you'll hear like a train in the distance, and we're gonna get out the book of quotations, and he's not doing a bit. That's the way he is. And I said, well, yeah, that was FM radio.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, when I went to make the move to digital in 2015, it was a different animal, different microphones, different everything. It was a little bit of an adjustment, but I mean, all the guys I mentioned, anybody who's still doing this is now on satellite. So, they made the move pretty much too.
Yeah, you're right. We are not, but that's probably because we're a nonprofit station and we have a very rabid local following. Right. But we're also on satellite, so you can hear the radio show that I do. You can ostensibly hear it in Norway, or you can hear it in Connecticut, or probably anywhere. That's the biggest change.
That's the best part.
Now people can go on their computers and listen to anything, which is pretty cool. It's nice.
Right, like back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you could get KLOS if you were in Los Angeles, but you couldn't get it in Tokyo. You can get it today. Right, absolutely true. Well, I was listening to, you mentioned New York, it was WNEW. Yep.
And then when I moved to LA, the AM station was still KHJ.
Okay.
It was just a very different way of doing radio. And you also had, obviously, a pretty limited playlist. I mean, right. you heard, Stand By Me every fourth song. So, you heard Groovin' every fifth song. Now, even our playlist is thousands of songs in the queue, which is cool. Get you an opportunity to introduce people to new music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the classic rock stations, the whole format across the country, since it's now like 5, districts. I mean, they're just humongous territories that these program directors control. I mean, mm-hmm. I love Hotel California like everybody else, but I don't have to hear it every 20 minutes.
Well, now you're picking up one of my pet peeves, because one of the reasons that Michael Bailey and I put the group Steam together is because most of the stuff that I do, when I do concerts, for the most part, they are somewhat jazz-oriented.
Right.
It's either some of the classic American songbook, maybe some of the stuff that my dad did, some of the stuff that I write is pretty much jazz pop oriented. But I wanted to have a vehicle outside of that where I could do a bunch of the songs that I grew up on that I really like, that are harmony rich and melody rich, tunes by Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers and the Beatles and Dan Fogelberg and Chicago, and I needed the right kind of musicians to be able to do this. But I didn't want to do the songs that everybody's heard a billion times. I don't want to get on stage and sing Groovin'. I don't want to hear Moon Dance for the 10 billionth time.
Right.
So, the songs that we do a Rascals tune, but we do How Can I Be Sure? And so we're doing all these songs that people definitely know and that they love, but they don't get beaten to death with them.
Right.
So when you do a tune like How Can I Be Sure, you can see people's faces going, oh, I love this song. I haven't heard this in, fill in the blank.
Exactly.
If you're going to do a Dan Fogelberg tune, you pick one that everybody knows but you don't hear all the time. There's a Andrew Gold tune called Lonely Boy that everybody knows, but it's not played that much. So these are the tunes that we've picked out. And at the end of the day, you've got a really happy audience that's coming away saying, wow, first of all, you guys can really sing. And that was the main purpose of putting this together, because there are a lot of garage bands and cover bands that can play, but they don't necessarily have the ability to pull off 4-part harmony on top of that and really make it sound good. And I'm fortunate enough to have those kind of musicians here. So I think people love hearing these tunes that just literally makes them happy. And we mix it up so much. It's not all ballads. It's not all up-tempo dance stuff. There's time for stories. And the stories to me are interesting. Are you familiar with who Andrew Gold was? Andrew Gold wrote the theme song to Golden Girls. Thank you for being a friend.
Okay.
Well, Andrew had quite a career going before that as a pop artist, and he worked with a lot of the LA people that were coming up at that time. Linda Ronstadt was a girlfriend of his for a while, and he was working with Jackson Browne and Don Henley. He was kind of in that group of the pop musicians that could also play and write. And he had a hit record called Lonely Boy, but when he wrote Thank You for Being a Friend, that's when you pull the Brinks trucks up.
Right.
Because that show ran for, I think, 8 years. It's been in syndication now for, forever.
Since then.
And Betty White, who was one of the stars, is now 99 years old.
Right.
And she is still reaping $3 million a year in residuals from that show. It's been off the air for some time. So the story that's interesting is not so much that Andrew Gold wrote that song, but one of the stories that I tell in our Steam concerts is Andrew Gold's mother was the lady that did all the singing for Deborah Carr and Audrey Hepburn and Natalie Wood in The King and I and My Fair Lady and West Side Story. None of those actresses sang one note. It was all a lady named Marnie Nixon, and Marnie was Andrew Gold's mom. So it just makes for an interesting circular story that these musical people, one of those second-generation guys who made a name for himself, doing something very different from what his mom did, but also kind of the same. And the studios told Marnie Nixon back in the day, this is a secret. No one is to know that those actresses aren't singing. If you ever do an interview where you admit that you're the person saying it, we'll make sure you never work another day again in Hollywood.
Right.
So it's just interesting stuff.
And that stuff happened in recording studios all the time. People were paid hush money, but this was ramped up. And I mean, you really wanted people to think these actresses were belting out, and that they were bringing in, asses to seats and selling popcorn. You got it.
Yeah. As simple as that. And Marnie Nixon, who was not an unattractive lady, but she didn't have movie star looks, and so she was behind the scenes.
Right.
And just like, the people that the Wrecking Crew and the different rhythm sections that went in and did records for, the Royal Guardsmen and the Archies. I mean,
the Monkees,
those weren't
Partridge
real
Family,
they were,
sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was Hal Blaine and Carol Kay and all those cats.
Right.
But they were fine with it. I don't think they really minded. They realized they were studio musicians. They got paid, and that was it. But of course, the record companies were saying, keep it quiet on the hush hush.
Sure.
That really was the Monkees playing. Well, no, it wasn't, but who cared?
Yeah. I think it's great that they actually, for their 20th anniversary, their reunion tour, actually learned how to play by that point.
Yeah, well, Mickey Dolenz could play the drums.
Right.
I mean, not Steve Gadd, but he could play. And Mike Nesmith actually could play. I mean, he wrote some real good tunes that became hits for other people. He could actually play guitar. Peter Tork could actually play some bass. But you're right. They finally, said, look, if we're going to do this, we don't want to have music coming in piped in from the side and we're just kind of faking it. So they actually did take the time to, get better at their instruments. I agree with you. I think it's cool that they did that.
Yeah, they didn't have to. I mean, they could have, like you said, just phoned it in, and 90% of people who aren't musicians aren't going to know or care.
Yeah, the audience wouldn't have cared. They're just happy to see them, and they see Davy Jones bounce around, they would have been thrilled. So.
I watch interviews with Danny Bonaducci, and he cringes. And he's like, look, no one even tried to show me where to put my hand even close to where it was supposed to be on the bass. And they would take close-ups of his hand. You would think, keep above his bust. No. It was a full-body shot. It was hysterical. But, I mean, that's half the charm of it, too,
I agree.
A show like that.
Yeah, you'd think someone would have pulled him aside and said, look, take 3 weeks and actually kind of learn what the instrument's about. Right. No, they were there to see Shirley and Sean, and that's it.
Now, Steam is
cool.
Steam is the 180 from that. You guys are, I mean, phenomenal. I don't remember if I asked Michael Bailey about the origin of Steam. How did that come about? STEEM, of course.
Well, it's STE, and then it's a backwards E
right.
and an M. And we were I said, look, I don't know what we're going to call this thing. I mean, what are we going to call it? Steve March-Torme and Michael Bailey do pop songs? I mean, we got to come up with something. So we took the STE from me, from Steve, and Michael's name is Michael Edwards, so we just turned it around. We put it EM. And I said, what about Steam? I mean, it might work. I mean, it's to the point, and I don't know. So that's how that came about. And, we had both agreed that let's try and do this, but really, let's do it right. I have no desire to be in a B- cover band. None. So if we're going to do this, let's I want other musicians to come see this and go, wow, you guys are really good. I mean, we know these tunes. We've heard Chicago's Question 67 and 68 before, and we've heard Steely Dan do Peg, but you guys are nailing this, and you're changing some of the arrangements. So it's not a karaoke band. Again, I don't want to, if I want to hear Peg, I can go put on the Asia album. But if I want to hear it done a little bit differently with a little different arrangement, but still nailing the important parts, then let's put together the best musicians we can. And that's what we've done. So it's basically Michael and my band, but with the best guys here. I mean, our drummer is as good as anybody I've played with anywhere, in LA or New York. His name is Mike Underwood. And when I go out and do my jazz gigs, that's who comes with me. But he can play anything. He's just one of those wonderkins. So that was basically the origin of the group. And it's grown now. It's a 10-piece group.
Wow.
And we have we brought in a new kid that's done 2 concerts with us. We have a new guitar player, singer, named Michael Murphy. Michael's 19. So I said, well, now that's good because now we brought the average age of the group down to 73, which is important.
Exactly.
The whole demographic changed completely. But good players, everybody likes everybody, and it's fun little side project for me.
You might see some soccer moms instead of just all grandmas out there now.
Oh, my God. Yes, that's exactly right. You go outside the parking lot afterwards, it's all SUVs, so we got the right audience.
Right. We lovingly call it the...
So are you playing? Have you been playing?
I have. I mean, January, February, March, those are typically lean months anyway. I've been doing a lot in the recording studio and taking advantage of that. But a lot is booked into 22. So, yeah, we're booking right now, and we're solidifying and trying to fill in the gaps where, one in May and one in October. Now we're trying to just, populate the middle.
You're in the same boat that I'm in and a lot of people are in. It's as simple as that. I mean, we'd all like to be booking and booking and booking stuff, but the problem is the obvious one. And there are venues saying, look, we're getting close, but the truth is we're not really quite there yet. We don't want people to feel unsafe. And it's kind of difficult for us to have, 25% capacity. It's almost impossible for us to make any money doing that.
Right, of course.
Not to mention it's pretty impossible for the groups to make any money. So you're right. There are people that are booking into 2022, some who are booking into, later this year. But, when I do my radio show, I have to constantly look at different artists' websites to see what they're doing. So I have something to talk about on the show. And it's not a big surprise that a lot of them you look under tour and it says no upcoming dates. It's just the way it is. I've got a couple of venues in Vegas that have inquired about my coming to play there, but they can't give me a date yet. And I get it. They're just saying, look, we think it's going to be fall. Probably, but we just can't give you an answer yet. So it's frustrating for a lot of people. I'm glad you're in the studio. I'm glad you've got work to do.
Yeah, I've got a new single on the way. I don't have a date yet, but, I've got that just about where it needs to be, getting ready to mix. And I've got a few more ideas that, are in the, some are in the tracking phase, some are in the demo phase. I'm writing for some other people, with some other people. It's been busy. I mean, the good thing about having some downtime at home, of course, you reconnect with your family and they remember what you look like again. But look how many,
or they don't because you've grown a beard.
Exactly.
One of the two, right?
Look how many programs Pro Tools has sold people. Hobbyists are taking it up now, and I think the average bear is going to be able to send you WAV files and understand what that is. It's a crazy time.
Yep.
But
yeah, I agree with you. And obviously, it's also changed homecraft.
Right.
People that have been sitting at home saying, "I can't fix that door."
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, now you can. You've had so much time and all these home projects of, yeah, you know what? I really could use a paint job. I was going to get around to it, but I've got nothing but time on my hands. So this whole thing has changed a lot of businesses and industries. But you're absolutely correct about the home thing. It's just you end up doing a lot of stuff at home that you didn't think of doing before because you're busy, you're out, you're doing stuff, and you're going to work or you're going on tour or God knows what. And when you're home, you read more. You probably don't watch as much TV because you can only do so much of that.
Right.
And you end up literally fixing your place. If you've got even if you live in an apartment and you're saying, well, I live here, I should have some pride in it. People are doing home projects. So probably a good thing.
Yeah. I wouldn't have had a chance to put out my album last year if not for some forced, and it was only a couple of weeks that I was home. I mean, I've been working pretty much the entire time, but without being on tour, I'm coming back home at night. And if I'm working at night, I'm coming back home in the morning. So I'm local. Right. And, the tool shop got fixed up again. And, I got to throw out all these things I never used. 3 lawnmowers that, 2 don't work. And they were just sitting there. And all these, the honey-do list is still on the wall. And now your wife is going, hey, guess what? Like you said, all you needed was the time. Here you go.
Oh, yeah, you're trapped. There's no excuses. No more excuses. Well, I did some of the same stuff. My wife said, we really should go through the closet because you have clothes in here. Here's a rule. If you haven't worn this shirt in 6 years, you're probably not going to.
Yeah.
So do the same thing. I mean, the nice thing is you can give a lot of your stuff to Goodwill, which is what we did. We're doing the same thing. The garage, different rooms. At some point, you realize, my God, there's so much stuff. I don't need to have all this stuff.
Right.
And it's very enervating to actually purge a bunch of stuff you don't use anymore and go, oh my God, I can actually breathe in this room again. It's not cluttered. So I've been doing that. Now, one of the things that I did, and getting back a little bit to baseball, was I've been looking, when I was in my 30s, I collected some fairly valuable baseball cards. Now, I've never planned on selling them. I'm just hanging on to them. But at some point you go, well, then why are you hanging on to them? Who are you going to show them to?
Exactly.
I mean, I've got 2 daughters at home who couldn't care less about baseball at all. And living in Wisconsin and living specifically here, which is about 35 minutes from Green Bay, nobody cares about baseball here either. It's all about the Packers. So that's one of the things that I'm kind of looking through. Do I need to keep this? Do I need to have that? And like you, I don't know what your collection of instruments is, but I've also been playing my instruments more, partly because I have to in Steam. When I do my jazz shows, I don't play any guitar. I play a couple of tunes on the piano. But when we do Steam, I'm a regular member of the band, so I'm playing either keyboards or guitar on every song. So it's nice. I get a chance to work on my chops and try and learn new stuff. And I'm sure you do the same thing. I'm sure you're always working on your instrument.
Yeah, my collection is not crazy. Honestly, these days I've got 4 basses, 2 precisions, a 5-string, a Washburn.
That's plenty.
A Washburn with terrible electronics, but it looks great. 3 acoustics, 2 of them are 12 strings. Again, one has horrible electronics, same company.
Of course.
2 solid body electrics, a Fender and a Les Paul, and then 2 keyboard decks. So I've got just enough where I can have different tunings and, different voicings. I don't need 30 basses. I don't need, 17 guitars. My daughter will need college books one day.
Right. This isn't Vince Gill's house. So,
right.
Yeah. So what year are your jazz precision basses?
Well, they're not jazzes. They're just straight up precision.
Oh, just precisions. Gotcha.
Yeah. The U.S. one, the blonde one, is actually a reissue. It's supposed to be like a late 70s reissue. It was actually made in 2003 when they came back here. And I have a black body with a white pickguard. That's actually a Mexican that I hot rodded with DiMarzio pickups. And I use that for the road so I could just beat the hell out of it. But it's great. Feels great. Sounds great. It's punchy. The 5-string is a Yamaha because you need a 5-string, low end. And
of course, more notes.
The Washburn had a custom finish that I've had since 1992. And, it just looks great on stage.
Cool. And for your audience, of course, when you say DiMaggio, you mean the Joe DiMaggio.
The Joe DiMaggio pickups, exactly.
Exactly.
They taste like coffee.
I was just going to say he was endorsing those at the time he was doing Mr. Coffee, but it wasn't as popular.
Right.
Thank you.
I just told that story this morning about Marilyn Monroe saying, "Joe, you'd never believe what it's like to have 100,000 people cheer you."
Oh, that is really funny. That is a true story too.
I know.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
And she wasn't even a true blonde.
Right. Wow.
Now that I pissed off.
Well, I don't have a. Go. I didn't catch that. Go ahead.
I said, and she wasn't even a true blonde. And I said, now that I just pissed off half my audience.
Right. Way to go.
There you go.
She has beautiful hair. She's like a chestnut brown.
Mm-hmm.
When you see those early pictures of Norma Jean, beautiful girl. Well, I don't have a crazy collection here. I'm lucky. I've got 4 or 5 guitars, and they're all really beautiful. And I got lucky enough to just have enough money at the time that I'd earned so I could get them. But you can't play 3 at a time.
Right.
And I got 2 that I probably will never get rid of because one was my very first really good guitar. So I don't play it anywhere except at home. But I can't part with it because it was the first one.
Right.
And another one I got was basically an investment. I've got a beautiful Martin D41 Special that, again, doesn't really leave the house. But if I absolutely had to, for God forbid one of my kids got sick and I had to sell something to help them out, it would go bye-bye. But so far, knock on wood, that hasn't happened. So I'm happy with the stuff I got. So who were you listening to when you were a kid? I think I asked you this the first time you and I talked on the radio. Who were your influences?
You might have. Well, I cut my teeth relatively young because my dad was a vocalist as well. And he would give me we would play flashcards with the 45s. His favorite groups were, of course, the Beatles, the Stones, like everybody else, the Skyliners, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, Elvis, of course, Johnny Cash. My stuff that I called my own was Kiss and Queen and Led Zeppelin, probably a lot of the same things that you grew up with. Billy Squier, Journey, Styx. I mean, it just goes. Nugent, the real album-driven rock, the real testosterone-driven rock. Van Halen, Motorhead, very, very early Motorhead, Motley Crue, Rat. And then into the 80s, it was, the more glossy sounding stuff, which I thought was cool. Alice Cooper, going back to the 70s. And but I also mixed it up. I loved my Grease soundtrack. I loved the Bee Gees. I loved the Four Tops. And anything with a lot of bass. I loved Chic. I know in the late 70s, Death to Disco, but I mean, those bass lines, come on.
Good records.
Yeah.
Period. Chic made good records. Yeah, you and I have a little bit of crossover. You were a little more rock oriented. Mine started with the Beatles and went from there, and it became Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and the Doobie Brothers, and again, of course, Steely Dan. Yeah, a little bit of a crossover. And it's interesting to go back and listen to the stuff. I pulled out all the vinyl that I have. It's been in boxes for a long time. And my daughter, I have a 17-year-old daughter who last year said, well, you've got all these records. Let's take a look at these. And you open up and start looking at it. Oh my God, I haven't heard this in 25, 30 years. And, I'm finding all these old Bee Gees records and stuff by Rupert Holmes and all these different records that you have because you just had to have them. They're on vinyl and they look cool. The album covers are cool. I mean, we all miss those big albums where you actually had artwork and liner notes. But it's pretty cool to pull those out and listen to the stuff you were listening to back then and see what holds up for you, see what you still, love. And of course, just about everything Stevie Wonder did. I mean, I loved all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we have some similar influences, definitely.
And of course, as naive as I was, my big question was, why, if you're releasing a single album, do you need a gatefold?
Yes. Why would you need that?
Well,
by the way, we should mention, I want people to know about this because, when Michael Bailey and I are not doing Steam together, we also have these holiday shows. And I don't know if Michael mentioned them to you or not, but I'm sure either he did or Mark Wood did.
Mark did,
and for the audience, I know Mark was on your show. Mm-hmm. And he is quite a brilliant violinist. I mean, he's a Juilliard grad, which that's all you need to hear that's all you need to hear right there.
Right.
I mean, it's hard enough to get into that school. I mean, they tell brilliant musicians, sorry, we don't have room for you.
Exactly.
So for you just to get in and then graduate from there and make a name for yourself and for your audience, Mark was one of the original founding members of Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Right.
And, he's a brilliant rock violinist in the vein of a Jean-Luc Ponty, someone like that. But he's a real rock showman. I mean, he has the whole rock thing on stage, the tight jeans and the leather. He still has long hair and he still moves really well. Well, we have a holiday show that Michael and Mark and I do with a bunch of other musicians called For Kids from 1 to 92, of course, taking the line from my dad's The Christmas Song. And it's pretty cool to be able to do this. We've been doing it for 2 years, and hopefully this year we've got a bunch of dates coming up. We're very lucky because, as you and I just went over in the last 20 minutes, so many people don't have any dates coming up, and it's understandable. It's just hard. But we've been able to fill in for this coming December with a bunch of shows, and it's really fun to work a show like that with so many different kinds of holiday music because there is so much to choose from. There's so many songs from Let It Snow and The Christmas Song and White Christmas and Please Come Home for Christmas. And to hear Mark's version of these really fast-paced instrumentals, and then Michael and myself doing, I do some of the jazz stuff. I'll do the Christmas song. Michael will do something by Greg Lake, Father Christmas, which is a pretty cool piece.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully people will be looking for that. They should go to my website, which is stevemarchtorme.com, or go to our Steam website, which is also on Facebook, or Mark Wood. And if you have a chance this coming holiday season, come out and see For Kids from 1 to 92, because it's a really audience-friendly, kid-friendly, but very musical show. It's not your usual stuff of everyone singing Noel. It's pretty classy, so I'm proud of that show.
We did talk about it a little bit, but see, being that Christmas is so far away still, it was just mentioned as something on the horizon, but absolutely, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we have, Steam has a concert coming up on August 4th out here in Wisconsin at a nice little town called Neenah. And then I've got some jazz gigs coming up, the Green Bay Botanical Garden coming up this summer. Another place called Arts on the Square, which is in a little town called Wapaka in Wisconsin. So those are jazz gigs, and that's where I get a chance to do something, obviously very different from Steam. They really are jazz-oriented, but I've got great players and so lucky to be working with musicians this good. I mean, I could have moved to, the Black Hills of Dakota, and there'd be nobody that knows how to play jazz. Right. So as it turns out, there are some very good jazz musicians here, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to be hooked up with them and play together.
This is the Ray Powers Hour on the line with Steve March-Torme. He came back despite last time. We had a blast last time.
Despite the reviews from last time. I said, well, you're not going to be doing that show again, are you? I said, well,
that guy?
There's no baseball game last night. Yeah, I'll be there.
There you go. Well, I did get some questions from the Peanut Gallery this time. Would you like to answer some of these? We can look through them.
Absolutely.
This will be fun, because I honestly don't know. I'm just taking them as they came in. I've got Sandy from Hackensack, New Jersey. Who needs a house out in Hackensack? Is that all you get for your money?
Oh, yeah, apparently so.
She wanted to know what your favorite meal to prepare at home is. Your favorite meal to cook.
What's my favorite meal to prepare at home?
I guess when you're in charge of the kitchen.
Right. Well, probably grilled swordfish or grilled salmon with grilled mushrooms, zucchini, and asparagus. Now, that doesn't mean it's my favorite meal, but that's my favorite one to make. If I'm not grilling a steak, and I don't eat steak that often because it's not a great idea as much as I like it. So, yeah, grilled salmon with probably grilled asparagus, mushrooms, and zucchini. That's probably my favorite to make.
My inner detective is telling me that you like to grill.
Well, it's the law here.
Exactly.
If you don't have a grill and you don't grill at least twice a week, they will come to your house and ask you to leave. So you have to. Yeah, it's part of the Wisconsin law.
It's in the bylaws. I saw it.
Absolutely, yeah. If they come over on a Tuesday, go, I'm sure your grill is not on. You have to come with us. So I don't want to go through that.
All right, well, speaking of Green Bay and speaking of tradition, Denise in Fort Lauderdale wanted to know who your favorite Green Bay Packer is of all time.
Well, it would sound like the obvious choice. Seeing as how I grew up in New York and L.A., I never liked the Packers, especially, way back in the 60s. The Packers were the best team, and they used to beat the hell out of the New York Giants and the L.A. Rams. But I've been following Aaron Rodgers since he played high school ball. I mean, I was following him when he was playing in Chico, California. And then when he played for the University of California for the Golden Bears, they were not very good, but he was. I mean, I already knew he was on the radar. And he is by far, if I had to pick a Packer, even though it sounds like, oh, well, he picked the obvious one because it's Aaron Rodgers. No, he really is. I've had arguments with people about him and Tom Brady. And I said, look, Tom Brady is a phenomenal quarterback. And that's obvious. He's a great leader and still has a strong arm. He's accurate. He works out of the pocket well. I said, but Aaron Rodgers can do everything Brady can do, only a little bit better. And they said, well, how come he hasn't won 6 Super Bowls? I said, because he has not played on any teams nearly as good as the Patriots. And it's a team game. But if I had to start a team, I would take him. And people say, well, that's just stupid. I mean, it's obviously Brady. I said, well, my opinion. Exactly. So I think he's a phenomenal quarterback. And even at playing at this age, he's still got a rocket for an arm. He's smart as hell. He's accurate. He runs better than Brady. He's a little more creative than Brady. Brady's a great quarterback who's played on much better teams.
And, as a Steeler fan, I am one of the few who actually acknowledges that the Packers are the greatest team of all time. 13 titles over the Steelers 6. And anybody who wants to discount, that first 40 years, Steelers were there and they could have won those. True.
And back then, like when Curly Lambeau was around and Vince Lombardi was around, I mean, Bradshaw was already in his late 40s, so, it was kind of tough. Look, I think, Terry Bradshaw I find to be, and I would never say this because we are fellow broadcasters, so I'm glad he's got a gig doing his commentary, but people kind of discount how good he was because he's become, a personality on television, and people used to make fun of him and say, Terry's so dumb if you give him the first 2 letters of cat, he can't spell the word.
Right.
You know what? He won 4 Super Bowls, and he was a great quarterback. You probably watched. He had great escapability, a strong arm. He didn't win those games by being stupid and not knowing what he was doing. He was a terrific quarterback.
And Hollywood Henderson, not long after that comment, found himself out of football. So, who's the dummy?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, you followed some great teams there. I mean, those Steeler teams, they've had some lean years, but, picking up Roethlisberger, who's hardly my favorite quarterback, he's still a hands-down Hall of Fame quarterback. He'll walk in backward.
Oh, yeah.
Their lean years were the Charlie Batch years that were kind of in between. But you saw great players. I mean, you saw Ham and Lambert and all those guys and Stallworth and
Harris and Blunt and Shell.
Lynn Swan. I mean, come on. Yep. They're just ridiculously talented teams.
Yeah. Well coached.
Lucky you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Well,
and, there is something to be said for playing in those kinds of towns. It does make you tough. I mean, the LA Rams have always had pretty good teams. And I will contend that one of the reasons they don't get over the hump a lot is simply because they do play in gorgeous Southern California. They're not the only game in town. There are the Dodgers, there are the Lakers, there's the Bruins, there's the Trojans. And when you play in a place like Pittsburgh where you're freezing your ass off every time you go to a game, and so are the players, it makes them tough. They are game tough. I give them a lot of credit.
Well, that's what happened to the Chargers when they had to go to Cincinnati in '82 and the wind chill was like negative 400 or something like that. They were done.
Good night.
Yeah, they were beat the minute they walked on the field. Exactly.
Not a chance.
I have time for one more of these. Geraldine in Brooklyn, New York, representing Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn, two, three questions from Brooklyn. Yeah, that's right.
Geraldine wants to know what the first concert you ever attended was.
That's a good question. That's a good one. First concert.
As a fan.
Well, you know what? I think the first concert I went to is one I talk about a lot because I got in trouble for going.
Nice.
I was in high school. I had barely gotten my license. I was 16, and I had a chance to go see a concert in Anaheim, California at the Anaheim Convention Center. We lived in West Los Angeles, so it was about a 45-minute drive. And because the concert started at a concert time, which was like, 8:30, and there were 3 acts, I got home about 2, and I got in big trouble for it. My dad said, I don't care when they went on. You don't stay out till 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, the opening act was Spanky and Our Gang. The second act was Vanilla Fudge.
Wow.
And the starring act with a 32-piece orchestra was the Bee Gees.
Oh, my God.
And that was a hell of a concert. It was really good. It was worth getting in trouble for.
I would have risked getting grounded, of course.
Yeah, I think that was the first one I went to, a full concert, pretty sure.
I'm a little jealous. Although my first concert ever was Madison Square Garden, 1980. It was Queen.
Wow. Oh, that had to be just unbelievable.
Well, it set the bar ridiculously high because now everything else is a letdown. I mean, it's like, well, it wasn't Queen, but it was pretty good. Kind of,
exactly.
Unfair.
Exactly. And they're still a 3-piece group.
Yeah.
I mean, to put out the sound that Brian May did was just ridiculous. I mean, just ridiculous group. And Freddie, there's never been anybody like him. There are a lot of guys that strut about the stage, and a lot of guys have high voices, but nobody had the it that he had. I mean, he was just such a character, and musically very talented. He wrote those songs. He actually could play piano. I never saw them live, and I'm sorry that I didn't.
I know. Well, it's we're gonna have to wait one day when we're all sitting in heaven. Hopefully, that side of the sky. But
mm-hmm. Yep. I finally saw somebody in concert 2.5 years ago that I'd never seen, and my wife said, "Well, he's coming to Green Bay at Lambeau Field. Why don't we go? Why don't you and the girls and I go? The girls would love to see him, because if not now, when?" I said, "Yeah, you got a point there." So we sold all of our possessions and went to go see McCartney at Lambeau.
Wow.
And he may not sing the way he did when he was 24, but it was still a great concert. And I would say that from the time he walked out on the stage, holding up that Hofner bass and the place going nuts, I would dare say that 90% of the concert I had tears just streaming down my face. I couldn't help it. I mean, it was just, I grew up on him and the Beatles, and having never seen them and hearing all those songs, that great band that he has, I was just an absolute mess. But it was worth it. And I could see my daughters looking up at me like, "Oh my God, he's crying again."
I live with nothing but women.
Together. It's embarrassing, Dad. But yeah, I'm really glad that I got to see that show.
That is awesome. Steve, we did it again. We blew through an hour here. Tell everybody where to go to get the updates.
Well, go to my website, which is one word, Steve March, like the month of March, Torme. So it's STEVEMARCHTORME.com. And my schedule is there. And there are videos there. There are a couple of videos I suggest you check out. There's a medley I do of a Rich Girl and Ooh Child, which is pretty cool with some of the musicians here. And there's also a version of Hit the Road Jack that I'm proud of. I hope people will like. So, like I said, there's videos. There's a biography, get an idea of my rather sordid background, and our upcoming schedule. Not just mine, but the group's Steam and our holiday stuff. And thank you for taking the time, because obviously, this does a lot more for me than it does for you. So I do appreciate it. Well,
Steve, listen, the music is fantastic, and the more people that hear it, the happier the world becomes. So thank you. And,
that's very nice of you. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm hoping we can do this in person next time. Either I'm out there or you're here. I mean, let's make a date. We'll get some pizza. We'll hang out. We'll crack a few beers, crack a few heads if necessary. And
I'd love to do that. I think it's more apt that I'll probably be out there. But
probably,
if you are here in in Cheesehead country, we can do it here. But that'd be fun. Yeah, that'd be really fun. We could talk about a lot of stuff. And actually, I'll bring my gloves so we can throw the ball around.
There you go. Steve March-Torme, everybody. Meet us out on Field 6 in Central Park. He's got center field. I'll be behind the plate or at third base. And grab a bat. Let's do this. Steve, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it.
Have a great night.
Talk to you soon.
The Ray Powers Hour.